Welcome to the Billion Insight podcast. I'm your host Sri. Today we are excited to welcome Ralph Velasco, a talented travel photographer, international tour organizer with over 120 international tours under his belt and experiences in more than 30 different countries. Mr. Ralph has a wealth of knowledge to share. His passion for exploring unique destinations has not only shaped his career, but also shines through his YouTube channel, podcast, where he shared his experience from the places he visited, inspiring many travelers around the world. Recently, he ventured to the seventh continent of the world, Antarctica, the land of the majestic penguins. Today, he shall be sharing insight and story from his adventure, from the stunning icy landscape of Antarctica to the vibrant street of the major cities. So we are thrilled to have him on the show. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Ralph. So welcome, Mr. Ralph. Welcome to the Billion Insight podcast.
Thank you so much. Very nice to be here.
We are excited to delve into your experience, sir.
Looking forward to it.
So, Mr. Ralph, can we start from the beginning?
Well, I'm originally from Chicago here in the USA, and I did live 15 years in Southern California for a while, but I'm back in the Chicago area now where I base myself. But I am a travel photographer and international tour organizer, and I am really what's considered a digital nomad. So I don't have a permanent home, and I'm typically on the road leading my tours or scouting or spending time in between my trips. So I've been doing this now for over 16 years, and I've done over 120 international trips with over 1,200 people. So been doing this for a long time. I'm also an author, podcaster, and public speaker. So these are different things I do. Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting. You just said that you are experienced the nomad lifestyle. That's quite exciting, I would say.
Yeah,
So
I'm very lucky. I get to get paid to travel the world.
So you were born and raised in Chicago, right?
That's right.
Sir, if I'm not mistaken, you are in your 50s?
I just turned 61, actually.
Okay, so you must grew up in 1960s Chicago, right?
Yeah, 60s, 70s.
So how it's like growing up in Chicago in 1960s for you?
It was wonderful. I'm very proud to be from Chicago. It's a wonderful city. We've had some problems lately, but it was a great place to grow up, Midwest of the United States, and beautiful city. And at the lakefront, Lake Michigan, which is a big lake, so it looks like the ocean almost. That's how big it is. But Chicago is a very wonderful place to be from, so I'm very proud to be from Chicago.
Great. So, sir, how you first interested in photography?
Yeah, I was always interested in photography. My father was a very good amateur photographer, and he sort of turned me on to it many years ago when I was a kid. And I had always enjoyed it, but it was so I've been traveling since I was about 15 years old, internationally by myself or with like school groups and adult supervision back at that time. But when I was 15, I studied in Spain for a summer. When I was 16, I was a volunteer in Peru. The next year, I was a volunteer in Venezuela. And the following year, I studied in Mexico City. So from a very young age, I'd been traveling, and even back then, always had a camera with me. But it then turned, I never thought that I could really make a living from travel and photography. Back then, before the internet and social media and digital photography, it was a very difficult thing to do, to differentiate yourself and what I'm saying is that I ended up taking sort of a more traditional route of in that I wasn't a travel or photography, but I have owned several restaurants. I sold real estate for a while. I was the marketing director for a division of a Fortune 500 company. And then I had my second restaurant around 2001 to 2004. And that's what I would say was sort of the dawn of digital photography. So that's when digital photography started to be more of a big consumer thing,
Mm.
and people were starting to buy new cameras, and they were completely different, and people wanted to learn how to use them. So I saw an opportunity to create some walking tours where I could take people out and teach them how to use those new digital devices.
Mm.
And that's what turned into what I have now, which is, after 16 years now, I only do international tours.
Mm. That's interesting. So, sir, do you remember the first camera you had when you started your journey into photography? Which camera it was?
Yeah. I used to have one, I think it was called a Ricoh,
Ricoh.
which, yeah, I want to say it was today they maybe make photocopiers or something. I think it was called a Ricoh. But my first digital camera was the Kodak EasyShare 1 megapixel, and it looked like a little point and shoot camera. But that was so fascinating because you put a little memory card in it,
Yeah.
and it kept the pictures, and it was all new to everyone. So
Yeah.
learning that and then being able to teach it to people, that was fun.
Yep. Yep. So, sir, when it was you got your first digital camera? Do you remember the year?
It probably was 2001 or 2002, maybe.
Hmm. How do you balance enjoying the moment and capturing it through the photography?
I'm sorry, how what?
When you are into photography, how do you balance the enjoying the moment when you click the photo of a particular subject or scenery or a landscape? How you balance enjoying the moment and capturing it through the photography? Sometimes we just took all the time, all the effort to take the particular scenery, but we often forget to enjoy that particular moment.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and it's
Yeah.
something that I'm very focused on these days
Mm.
because I've written several new books that are they're in a series that I'm calling The Mindful and Intentional Traveler. And the idea is to be more present. And especially as photographers, we are constantly with our eye to the viewfinder.
Yeah.
And so I would often go to these wonderful places,
Yeah.
and I would come back with beautiful pictures, but then I wasn't sure if I was actually there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I would, come back with wonderful pictures, but then, I realized that I was seeing the whole thing through the viewfinder of a camera. And so
Yeah.
in my first book that I wrote way back in 2009, the last tip in the book is put the camera down, meaning that we should spend time, enjoying the place and not always thinking about photography. And so that's why I came up with this new Mindful and Intentional Traveler series, was to be able to have more of a balance between traveling and the photography part of it.
That's interesting. I will link all the books of Mr. Raff. If you want to check out his work, you can find all the links of his work in the description. So, sir, what kind of photography equipment you use nowadays?
Yeah, so nowadays I'm shooting almost exclusively with my iPhone 15 Pro Max.
That's
And
interesting.
yeah, that's in part because I'm shooting a lot of video these days for my YouTube channel.
Hmm.
And so I knew that I needed to make it easy and simple and quick and lightweight.
Yeah.
And and now the phones are so powerful, and you
Yeah.
could shoot 4K and slow motion and
Yeah.
time lapse and all sorts of beautiful features that I decided that I just wanted to shoot with my iPhone. And for video, it's wonderful. I do miss the photographing.
Hmm.
My last camera that I had was the Panasonic Lumix camera.
Hmm.
And oh my God, I'm just blanking out on what my most recent, because I haven't used it in probably
Hmm.
3 years.
Yeah.
So now I'm
It's
shooting
natural. Yeah.
exclusively
Hmm.
with my iPhone. And as they say, the best camera is the one that's in your pocket. And these smartphones are with us all the time. They're so powerful. We can do different things. Like I said, the time lapse, slow motion, video, photographs, sound. We can share things. We can edit right on the phone.
Yeah.
So it's so convenient and so high quality that I have no problem just shooting with my iPhone these days.
That's interesting. So you are focused on the portability over the big size of a DSLR.
Yeah, especially as much as I travel,
Yeah,
I
that's
don't miss having to carry
yeah,
around a
exactly.
big DSLR camera
Yeah,
or even a smaller Micro Four
yeah,
Thirds.
the mirrorless
So
one. Yeah.
uh, it was a Fujifilm camera that I my most
Oh.
recent camera, Fujifilm. I completely
Mhm.
blanked on the
Yep, yep. What kind of equipment do you recommend for the beginner? Do you believe that everything can be done through the smartphone, or do you think that there's still a need of the DSLR camera?
Well, I don't know these days. It depends on what you're doing with your photography. So, people often ask me what kind of camera should I buy?
Yep.
And the first thing I say is number one, what kind of photography do you want to do? Are you looking to do high-end portrait, low light photography? Then perhaps you need more of a DSLR or at least a Micro Four Thirds system with
Mhm.
interchangeable lenses and zooming capabilities and things like that.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
really depends on your what you're going to photograph and what your
Mhm.
budget is. We
Yeah,
all have these smartphones in our pockets, so they're right there with us all the time, and everyone's used to seeing people take photographs with their phones.
yeah.
And I like to, I've always said this, that I don't like to look like a professional photographer and to have big, two big bodies and two lenses. And I think it can be very intimidating to your subject sometimes.
Yeah.
So to have just a smartphone, it kind of makes you look like a regular person and it's less intimidating to your subjects, especially, when they're people.
Yeah.
So there's always a trade-off, though. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both types of photography. I just think that the disadvantages of only using the smartphone do not outweigh the advantages. The advantages are much more.
Yep, yep, absolutely. So, sir, how did you first get into the travel industry, and what inspired you to start the travel experience for others?
Yeah, when I had this restaurant in Chicago from 2001 to 2004,
Mm.
as I say, it was the dawn of digital photography, and I was just getting my first cameras and learning how to use them. When I had this restaurant in around 2003, I had to decide if I was going to sign another 5-year lease and commit myself to another 5 years of this restaurant, or was I going to sell it or walk away? And I took a yellow pad and I wrote down on one side, I said, what are the negatives of owning a restaurant? And I wrote things down like I had to have a physical space. So I needed to pay rent on a restaurant space. I had to have employees. I was serving something that people consumed and could make them sick. So felt like there was a liability there. I came home smelling like a French fry every night. So these were on the other side of the page. I said, I don't want to have employees. I only want to have to work for myself. I don't want a retail space. I want to be able to work wherever my computer is. So that was sort of early digital nomad idea. I wanted to take a shower before work and not after. And so all these things that pointed towards this new thing that I was getting involved in, which was digital photography. And I said, I'll bet people would pay someone to teach them how to use their new digital cameras because no one really knew how to use them and there wasn't much information out there. So I decided to create some walking tours and be able to get people out into the environment and show them how to use their cameras. And this was something that I wanted to do in Chicago initially, but then I decided that maybe wasn't a great idea because winters can be difficult here, the summers can be warm. So I wanted to move back to Southern California, where I'd already lived, and be able to put together some trips around the year. And so I decided to move out to California. This would have been 2005. And I got my financial services licenses. So I was a financial advisor.
Mhm.
And this is something I did for 3 years. But while I was doing that, I was teaching photography, digital photography, at the local city of Newport Beach, Saddleback College, University of California Irvine Extension Program, where I could teach but not have to have a teacher's license because that takes years and much more serious. This was a way for me to get in front of people, to test my business out, the business idea, because I was able to test it on a small group of people before I decided whether or not there was a market there. And it was a great way for me to start developing and building my following.
Yeah, yeah. Since you are into the travel industry for a long period of time, what do you think? What is the biggest challenge you face in this industry today?
Well, certainly it was COVID, of course, because, here I am trying to get people to come on international trips with me. And during the height of COVID, we couldn't even leave our houses. And so that was a very difficult thing over the past 3 or 4 years. That's subsided, but it's been slow going trying to get back to normal pre-COVID days. So I've been, what COVID did for me was it allowed me to create my YouTube channel and write some other books and do some things that I wasn't ever able to do because I was traveling so much and always with my groups. So in a way, and I'd been doing that very hardcore for about 12 years, where I was on the road 8 or 9 months out of the year. And so that it was actually a welcome rest to not have to be on the road that much, but it wasn't great for the business because I wasn't making any money. But it did give me time to do other things that I'd been wanting to do but never had time. But some of the challenges today are that because of COVID, a lot of people changed their professions. They wanted to pivot, as they say. And so a lot of people went into doing tours. So a lot of people that I know that before COVID weren't doing trips are now essentially some sort of competition. Now, I'm very happy to have been 12 years into this, and I've developed a following, and I've got, reputation, and people are referring me to my trips. So I'm not starting new after COVID, but now there's more competition, however you want to look at it.
So during the COVID, you used the lockdown time to create your own YouTube channel. That's interesting. So that's how you get into world of content creating, right?
That's right. So I'd always thought that my business would be good for YouTube because I'm traveling to these wonderful places. I teach photography, I teach travel tips. So it would be perfect for a YouTube channel. And so the COVID gave me time to do that, which, as you probably know, having a YouTube channel or a podcast is very time consuming. It's takes learning new skills. And so that it gave me time to do that and some other things that I'd been wanting to do. So that was a good thing about it.
Yeah. Which was the first country you have visited?
Well, Mexico would have been the first country. When I was a kid, my parents would go down to Mexico about every year. It was where they liked to go to visit. My grandparents lived down there for a time. My grandfather was from Mexico and moved to Chicago before I was born, of course. And so we had this affinity for Mexico. So my parents would go down there, and it's beautiful. So as a kid, that would have been my first real country international country that I'd been to. But later, when I mentioned that I studied in Spain when I was 15 years old, that was by myself, but with my school group. So without my parents. So that was my first time to Europe. And that's when I fell in love with Europe and Spain specifically. So now I've been to Europe probably 50 or 60 times, and I'm looking to move over there in the next year or so. So it's a place that's very close to my heart. And so that's when I, really got interested in travel, was studying in Spain.
So Spain is one of the most memorable country you have visited. So apart from Spain, what other country you like to mention, which is close to your heart?
Yeah, let's see. Cambodia is very close to my heart. It's a beautiful place that I've been to many times and bring groups to. Wonderful people. Just really, really enjoy Cambodia. Cuba is a place that I've been to now 19 times. It's an island in the Caribbean, just 90 miles off the coast of the U.S.
Hmm.
And that's a place that I've been to many, many times, have very good friends down there.
Yep.
So I really enjoy Cuba. Antarctica is another place I think we'll talk about, but
Yep.
one of my favorite countries is India. And
Hmm.
India is a wonderful place to for photography, food, people, history. It's just fantastic. When I was in third grade, I remember we were told to do a report on India, and so I remember writing this report in like third grade about India, and it took me a long time to get there. I think I didn't get there until 2011,
Hmm.
and but yeah, it's just such a wonderful place.
So you visited India in 2011.
Yeah, I think that was the first time I visited. Yep.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, you went to Rajasthan, right? Jaipur.
Yeah, Jaipur, Delhi,
Hmm.
Agra, Jodhpur, and
Hmm.
Pushkar.
So which country would you like to visit once again?
Let's see. I would like to go back to Japan. I was only in Tokyo for about
Hmm.
5 days one time, and it's a country I would like to explore more. Seems very fascinating culture and great food, and so that's a place I would like to get to again.
Hmm.
Uh, the Republic of Georgia in
Hmm.
the Caucasus regions over
Hmm.
by Syria, Turkey, Russia, Armenia. That's another beautiful country that I've fallen in love with.
Hmm. Hmm. What advice would you like to give someone who looking to enter this travel industry?
Yeah, it's something that I've been doing now for a long time, and it's like I said, there's a lot more competition these days. People, because it's a wonderful business, because it essentially get paid to travel around the world. It is a business, it is work,
Yep.
but it's fun work, and I enjoy the majority of it. But also, don't be fooled that all I do is photography because that's about 5% of what I do.
Hmm.
Most of what I do is planning the trips and itineraries, and that's something that I really enjoy doing.
Hmm.
But it's more administrative type work, marketing, email marketing,
Hmm.
websites, and so there's a lot more to it than just that people see me traveling around the world and they
Hmm.
think that I'm on vacation. um, I'm not. I'm almost never on vacation. I'm almost always working when I'm traveling, but I've got one of the best offices in the world,
Hmm.
which is the world, and so for that reason, it's a great business.
Yep, yep. So which country was the easiest for you to visit?
I mean, Europe for U.S. citizens is very easy these days because we can just show up with, we don't need a visa, although they're going to introduce some sort of like a Visa Lite for Americans, where I think it costs maybe $7 per year, I believe, but you have to register in advance. But for the most part, Europe is very easy to travel around. It's most people there speak English if you don't speak the local language, and so that's pretty easy. Of course, Canada, which is just north of us here,
Hmm.
is very easy for Americans to get to. Mexico, so I would say those countries, yeah.
Hmm. Let's dive into your recent trip to Antarctica. Let's move on to that. How was your experience in Antarctica?
Yeah. Yeah, this was my first time there, and it was just this past February, which of course is their summer. And
Hmm.
when I think of Antarctica, I think of cold and tundra and windy and desolate and very harsh environment. But it was beautiful. When I was down there, the weather was in Fahrenheit from 25 to 45 degrees, so very mild. Coming from Chicago winter, it was colder here in Chicago than it was
Hmm.
in Antarctica. And
Hmm.
so I was just wearing sort of regular winter clothes, not anything special. And but going down there, and what we do is we fly down. So we don't take the Drake Passage, take a ship across the Drake Passage, which is this notoriously rough section of water between the tip of South America and the Antarctic Peninsula. So it's a very, the water there is very rough, and there could be 50 to 100-foot waves. And so we instead fly down. So we fly from Punta Arenas, Chile, down to Antarctica in less than 2 hours. And so that's very comfortable. Instead, otherwise it takes 2.5 days to sail down on the Drake Passage. So you take a chance of it being extremely rough. But then getting down there, we stay on the smallest ship in the industry. It's only 67 passengers, but it's a former icebreaker from Greenland. So it's a very capable ship, but it's small. And just beautiful, well-appointed, wonderful. But being on a small ship allows us to get into smaller bays and places where the bigger ships can't go. Plus, it allows us to get off on the shore, because in Antarctica, there's a treaty that says only 100 people can be on shore at one time in any one place. So with 67 passengers, of course, we can all get off, check it out. And but with other ships, they can only get off in stages, or they can't get off, or they can't go to those places. So that's not a trip that I would want to do. So when I found this company to arrange these trips, they were the most experienced in this fly-in cruise, they call it. We fly down and you cruise and you fly back. But the airplanes are big airplanes. They're probably seat 150 people. They've got flight attendants. You get a meal on the way. So it's a proper airplane. This isn't any puddle jumper. And so it was absolutely fantastic. Antarctica it's like another world. You realize that you're on the bottom of the world. You're in this isolated place, very pristine environment, lots of wildlife, penguins, whales, seals, birds, absolutely fantastic. And much of the wildlife is very friendly because they don't know people. They don't know people as dangerous. So they have to tell us that, don't pet the penguins, don't touch them, give them the right of way if they're walking, because they have these little penguin highways, they call them. And so they go from the sea where the parents, the adults, will go and fish. They'll go get fish to feed. Then they'll walk up this hill to go where their chicks are in a safe place, and then they'll feed the chicks. And when we were down there, you could see all the chicks because this was the breeding season. And so that was super interesting. But I was just really blown away by the natural beauty, the isolation, the pristine environment. You don't see any airplane trails or airplanes or construction sounds or TV towers. And, it's just natural environment. The only thing you see is your other fellow travelers and the ship. And so it's just an incredible place. I'm so happy I was able to get there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I have a friend in Indonesia. His name is Crow. We were discussing earlier that one day we will travel to Antarctica. Actually, I was looking for someone who actually visited Antarctica. Then suddenly I came across to you, and it was a really coincidence, sir.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yep. To get to Antarctica, you first need to be in Chile or Argentina or possibly through New Zealand, right? To get into the Antarctica.
Yeah, I don't know about New Zealand, but yeah, definitely southern, Patagonia, which is southern Argentina or Chile. Yes.
Yep. If our listener wants to visit Antarctica, what are some important things they need to know before making to the trip? What essential items should traveler pack considering the extreme weather? But you just mentioned that when you visited the Antarctica in February of this year, that time there was summer in Antarctica. The temperature was very stable, and it was not that much as you face in Chicago.
Yeah, when we put this trip together, we give everyone a packing list, a suggested packing list. For this particular trip, they need to bring their own clothing, of course. It's not something that's supplied down there. like the foul weather gear. So I just wore, people were wearing heavy winter jackets, layers. You want a t-shirt, a sweatshirt, then maybe a Patagonia type fleece, and then a big puffy jacket. I was mostly walking with my jacket completely open because, when we get off the ship, you're hiking a little bit, maybe you're going uphill, so you're expending energy, and so it gets warm when you're inside this, all these layers. But other time, so what we do recommend, of course, is to bring what we call long johns. Are you familiar with long johns?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's like long underwear, so long sleeves, long pants. I
Oh.
probably don't wear them much in India.
Yeah.
So it's an extra layer,
Okay.
and so that's something that we recommend people bring. But I wore it one time just because I brought it. But other than that, I didn't find it necessary to have that. But you should bring it with. The other thing that what we supply is boots. So very good, sturdy boots that for walking on the Antarctic continent. And so the boots are supplied, which you get down there in Punta Arenas, so you don't have to bring these with you, which is really nice. The other thing is, of course, hats and gloves you want to have, but bringing sunglasses is a good idea because the snow can be very bright. Although I didn't wear mine too much, which I probably still should have. And what else? Of course, you want, your camera equipment, but you don't want anything too big and bulky because, you want to be fast and able to maneuver your camera instead of having this big thing around you. So I really liked having just my smartphone with me, and I got some really nice shots, some great video, and you can see those on my website if you haven't already.
I have seen a video of yours you uploaded into YouTube. That was a beautiful video. I have seen that.
Yeah, incredible place.
Yeah. How far you went through the Antarctica? I mean, how far we can go?
How far into Antarctica?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a fairly small portion of it because the whole continent is protected. It's not a country. It's not owned by any country, so there's treaties that everyone has an understanding. It's mostly research that people are doing down there. Anyone that lives down in Antarctica is there for research, maybe military, I think. But so we, again, just fly down from the tip of South America to sort of the northern tip of Antarctica. And we spend time on this Antarctic Peninsula, but it's a fairly small part of the continent. And it's interesting because we were there for 2 or 3 days, and then the tour director on the ship said, "Okay, today's the first day we're going to actually be on the Antarctic continent." And I said, "Oh, I thought we've been here for 2 days. We've been getting off the ship on these different places. What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, this is the first place that if you wanted to, you could walk from the shore all the way to the South Pole, where the other places we got off, these were islands, but they were Antarctica, but they just weren't, actually connected to the continent. You'd have to go through water to get to the South Pole." So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting. So the area which you were visited in February, the temperature were like 0 degrees Celsius, you mentioned, right?
Yeah, about 0 Celsius, yes.
Yeah, 0 Celsius. So if we go deeper into more, then the temperature will be gradually decrease over as we pass, right?
Yeah, you would think so. And mostly it's because of, the wind can be very strong there. I think the water actually makes it more temperate, more even. But when you get further away from the ocean, I think you start to get lower temperatures and rougher weather. But I think it's considered the largest continent on Earth. So it's really big, but we only touch a very small part of it, as you can imagine.
Yep. Interesting thing is we are living on this planet Earth, but there are still many things that we haven't discovered yet. There is so much mystery maybe buried under the snow we didn't know. We haven't discovered that yet.
Oh, for sure. And they,
Yeah,
they say that we know more about the moon than we know about our own Earth.
exactly.
Especially the
Yeah.
oceans and stuff.
Yep,
It's
yep, yep.
incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Are there any restrictions for children or elderly people to visiting Antarctica?
There were some children on this ship. They, and not babies, of course, but probably 7 or 8 years old, I think was maybe the
Mhm.
limit. So, but for older folks, certainly doesn't matter how old you are, but it matters your walking capability.
Mhm.
So people need to be pretty good walkers, to be able to get down there and get off the ship and get
Mhm.
onto a Zodiac, which is a small boat, then get off the Zodiac onto the shore. And the shore might be rocky or snowy, slippery, gravel, things like that. So I think people
Mhm.
need to be fairly good walkers. But I had a woman on my last trip that she might have been 75 or 80 years old, and she just was in good shape and was able to walk. So of course, it doesn't matter how old you are, just your walking capability. And
Mhm.
but there are people that go down there, I'm sure, with handicapped people that have mobility issues that maybe don't get off on the ship or get off on the shore,
Mhm.
but there are probably ways for people to be accommodated with those types of mobility issues. Otherwise, just going down there and being on the ship and seeing these things is absolutely incredible.
Absolutely. So the best time to visit Antarctica is when it's summer there. If you go at any other time, the temperature will be unbearable. The temperature would be very much in
Yeah, so
negative. Yeah.
the season the season to go down to Antarctica, at least as a tourist,
Yeah.
is I believe maybe late November through March. So it's a
Okay.
fairly short season. It's their summer mostly, I guess
Mhm.
spring, summer. And so that's the time that they allow
Okay.
tourists to go down there.
Mhm.
There are some places where I think they have year-round
Mhm.
people that are down there for research,
Mhm.
military, but that's not too common.
Mhm.
But I was something interesting I was just reading yesterday is that apparently only 0.005% of the world's population has ever been to Antarctica.
Whoa.
That's a pretty exclusive club, so I'm very
Yep.
happy to say that I'm a
Yep.
part of it now.
Yep. 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 I mean, there are many people, they are not aware that they can, in fact, can go to Antarctica.
Oh
There
yeah,
is no
yes,
awareness about this, I would say.
yeah. And I feel extremely grateful for
Yep.
having had the opportunity to go down
Yep.
there,
Yep.
no
Yep.
doubt.
Yep. Okay. For those who seriously considering a trip to Antarctica, if we look at your journey, the easiest way is to first get into Chile. Once you are in Chile, then what is the estimated cost to reach Antarctica from there?
Yeah, so the cost of my trip depends if you want a single room or if you want to share with someone. So a shared room is about $15,000 per person, and a single room is about 21,000 per person.
Hmm.
And that includes pretty much everything except for the flight down to Chile. And
Mhm.
so it's about 8 days. We spend one night in Punta Arenas on the front end. We fly down, spend 5 nights on the ship, fly back, spend one night back in Punta Arenas, and then we go out. Then we fly out. There are less expensive trips. There's less expensive ways to get down to Antarctica, but again, it's you're talking 4 to 5 days of
Mhm.
sailing the Drake Passage, which is where three oceans come together. So it can be very rough, like I said.
Mhm.
I had one person on this trip who it was his second attempt to get to Antarctica, but the reason was because the first time he went, like 2 years ago, someone died on his ship.
Mhm.
And what happened is, from my understanding, is that it was very rough. The seas were like 30, 40, 50-foot waves. And he must have been walking in the hallway of the ship for some reason. And I think he got a head injury. Maybe he got knocked against the side of the ship. And so he got a head injury and died. Very
Oh.
unfortunate. So the ship had to be diverted, and they didn't get to Antarctica. And so that's why he came with me, because he wanted to go to to get to Antarctica.
Okay, okay. So it was an accident. I mean, it could
Yeah.
happen to anywhere, not just in Antarctica.
Yeah, but it's because of those big waves.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because you spend 2.5 days one way.
Mhm.
And if it's rough, and it's not always rough, but if it's
Mhm.
rough, I can't imagine. And I'm a sailor. I spend a lot of time on the ocean, but I can't imagine doing that for 2.5 days. You've got seasickness. I had another client who her roommate was thrown off of her bed and broke her wrist, I think. My friend, flew off of her bed, and she was slightly injured. But those are the kinds of things that can happen.
Okay.
Um, but some people just want to say that they sailed the Drake Passage, and got down there and back. For me, that wasn't an important thing. I was very happy to fly down there and just be there and come back. And Punta Arenas is a nice little town in southern Chile, and we stayed at a very nice hotel. The company has its own sort of club that they have down there. It's like an exclusive place for people that are going on the trip. They've got a library, they've got a restaurant. We have our welcome dinner there. They've got a little shop. They've got a theater where they addressed everyone and talked about the trip, because we were leaving the next day. So they had a theater there, and they had all the experts telling us what to expect, how to prepare for the next day. That's where we get our boots and sign in and everything for the trip. So it's very, very well organized. They've been doing this for over 20 years.
Yep, yep, yep. As you mentioned that the large wave, I have seen your video that ice are floating over the sea while the ship is sailing. This is kind of remind me that Titanic, what happened to the Titanic is big ice is Titanic collided with it. So I just
Yeah,
wondering how come a sea can go easily through that path?
yeah, yeah. The icebergs. So
Yeah.
those are the things that they call it calving. They calve off of the glaciers. So the glaciers are constantly moving,
Hmm.
and so they're flowing into the ocean. And so every day pieces are breaking off and falling into the ocean. And so that's what we see are these icebergs. And they are some of the most beautiful things you could ever imagine. The beautiful blues and greens and whites, and the colors are amazing. And this is where a lot of the seals and penguins will rest
Hmm.
before fishing and stuff.
Hmm.
And so really interesting. And so as far as like the ship hitting an iceberg, it's very unlikely, because now with today's technology, they can see everything. They've got radar that tells them where all these things are. This is an icebreaker, the ship that's actually made for ice breaking. But yeah, with the technology today, that's no longer much of an issue. And the experience of the captain, this captain had been on the ship for I think 10 or 12 years.
Hmm. How much earlier you have to plan for this trip? I mean, to book the trip.
Well, always the earlier the better, because sometimes these trips sell out,
Hmm.
and you don't want to miss out on that. But I have my next trip is next February 1st through 8th, which is the exact week that I was there this year. But that I've already got people on that trip registered, but there are some spaces left. But people want to be able to plan in advance and know that they've got this trip coming up
Hmm.
and get their flights and things like that. So I actually didn't find out I was going until about 3 weeks before the trip.
Oh.
So I was able to get everything arranged fairly shortly. And if there's space, people can do it last minute. But my trip was sold out, so no one could get onto it later.
Hmm. So it was for you in last moment, like a three weeks prior, you have booked your trip. But you were lucky in that time you got the ticket, but that may not be possible for others. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Besides penguins, what other wildlife you have seen in Antarctica?
Yeah, we saw amazing big whales. I believe they were gray whales, and the big typical whales with their tail fin, and feeding on the local krill, which are sort of very small shrimp. And you could see them breaching and going up with their tails and things. You'll see that in the video that I made. And so those are absolutely incredible. Lots of seals, different types of seals are down there, which are very, very interesting. Some birds down there. The one thing we didn't see were the orcas, the killer whales. That was one thing we didn't see on this trip. But yeah, it was, and what's nice is that the people on the ship, the people that run the ship, they go where they think the wildlife is. They have ways of knowing where their migrations are or where there's pods of whales and things like that. So they know where to go. But everything is dependent on the weather. So, they try to avoid any extreme weather, and they've got very sophisticated radar and weather systems and people that know how to read these systems to tell us where to go. And with the small ship, we're able to go into places that most other ships cannot go to. So we never saw one other ship the whole time. That's how isolated we were. And it's my understanding that there's something like 50 or 70 ships down there at that time of year, and we never saw another one.
Yeah, that's really interesting, sir. I hope our listener will get enough insights to make their travel to Antarctica.
Come on with me. I'm the one to do it with.
So, Mr. Ralph, can we talk about your books and podcasts, which you've been doing for quite a while?
Yeah, my pleasure. So I mentioned earlier that I've got 2 books out. One is called 60 Affirmations for Travel, and it's an adult coloring book with some affirmations in it that people can journal and be inspired for travel. The other one is a gratitudes edition, and it's got adult coloring pages, word searches, crossword puzzles, inspirational quotes, and these 60 gratitudes for travel. And these are things that, again, are made to bring us more present. When I was on that trip in Peru back in 1980, when I was 16 years old, we were young boys back then, high school students, and we, after a while, this was completely new for everyone. We'd never been down to a place like this. I'd been to Spain the year before, but most of the other boys hadn't traveled too much. And it was something where, it was so different that we were complaining a little bit that, we miss our mother's cooking or our own beds or our friends and family. And so one of the instructors on the trip said something that I'll never forget. And he said, "Be here now." And what he meant was that, we've got this incredible opportunity to be in this amazing place that none of us had been to before, to learn from this culture, the people, to see these incredible sights, do these amazing things. We should appreciate it and to simply be here now, not to be thinking about being back home. We've got this opportunity to be here now. And so that was kind of the theme of this Mindful and Intentional Traveler series, was to encourage people to be here now. And again, as a travel photographer, I am one of the worst at this because I'm always seeing these places through the viewfinder of a camera. And I get some nice shots and video, but the more I travel, the older I get, the more I think that I want to enjoy the moment, to be there, to simply sit in a cafe and watch the world go by, or in a pub and have a beer with a local person, meet a local person, and just to absorb the place, both through my eyes, my hearing, the sound of the place, the feeling of the place, the sounds, sights, even the tastes, the food. Appreciate these things more. And so that's something that I'm really big on. I'm actually writing a 3rd book now called How to Be a Mindful Traveler, and it's about using the 5 senses. and really focusing on a different sense, feeling. I was just in Copper Canyon, Mexico, and it's bigger and deeper than the Grand Canyon here in the US. And hardly anyone's ever heard of it. And it's like 2 hours south of us here in the US. And when I was there, I was trying to stop, look, listen, feel, taste. And so I would just sit by the edge of the canyon. I said, I'm putting the camera down. I'm not going to be worrying about photographing. I just want to look at this incredible natural wonder. I want to feel the breeze coming up from the canyon, smell the pine trees, feel that sun. And it's incredible that we go through life, we're always multitasking. I know I am trying to, I'm listening to a podcast while I'm driving, while I'm talking to someone, doing all these different things and not doing any of them really well. So this is such a huge thing that I think people will get so much more out of their travels if they do this more intentionally. And that's the idea.
That's interesting. So, Mr. Rapp, we are on the final segment of our podcast. This segment we call Instant Insights. I will ask you some quick questions. You have to respond as fast as you can. So, Mr. Rapp, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay then. Best way to start the day.
Best way to start the day?
Yep.
With a cup of coffee and the sun on my face, getting outside a little bit, and maybe doing a little stretching.
Okay. Coffee or tea? You already mentioned you are a coffee guy than the tea. Okay, I will move on.
Yeah.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Beach or mountains?
A beach by the mountains. And I mean that seriously because I that's what I'm looking for in Europe is a place by the beach, but with mountains. However, I love snow-capped mountains. I might lean towards the mountains if I had to be pressed.
City or countryside?
Countryside. These days, I'm much more countryside. I used to be more city, but now definitely country.
The older we become, the more we appreciate and like the countryside. I have been hearing this from many people. Do you think this is true?
I think so. I
Yeah.
think so. I'm so over the traffic and noise and crowds and everything like that especially being in Chicago, although I don't live in the city anymore, but I appreciate being in the suburbs, in the countryside, peace, quiet, not a lot of, things happening around. I'm sure in India, you probably long for the countryside once in a while, right?
Yep, absolutely. Blue or green?
Blue.
Most used app on your phone, beside camera.
Well, probably mail. I'm always checking my emails, checking Facebook, I suppose, too. That's because, my business is so related to
Yeah.
email and also marketing on Facebook and stuff. So I'm always looking to see if anything's happening.
Early bird or night owl?
Both, unfortunately. Yeah, just the other night I was up till 3 o'clock in the morning and
Oh,
got up about 9. But yeah, I prefer mornings. If I was pressed, I prefer mornings because it's quieter, it's less people are out. The light in the for photography is much better. The tourists aren't out when I'm traveling yet. So I like to get our groups out a little bit early, like 8, 9 o'clock, 7, 8, 9 o'clock, maybe right after breakfast, go out, see the kids on their way to school, people on their way to work. It's the locals. It's cooler. So I would say definitely mornings.
introvert or extrovert?
Probably introvert.
What is your go-to stress relief method?
Uh, Breathing, intentionally breathing deeply and, kind of getting calm and back to center.
Do you do meditation or yoga?
I don't, and it's something that I would like to start doing. One of my next books is going to be meditations for travel.
Hmm.
But yeah, yoga is something that I could use because, as I mentioned, I've got a bad back
Yeah.
and I should be stretching more and absolutely would love to get into that.
Hmm. Travel back in time or forward in time?
Mm, that's a good one. Probably forward in time just because I'd love to see where we're going. It's such incredible, we're in such an incredible place now that to see where it's going into the future would be really interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a good idea about the past, and there's certainly time periods that I would love to go back to. And, you know, how did they build the pyramids? I'd like to know
Yeah.
that. How did they build Stonehenge and all these secrets that we
Yeah.
don't know, but going into the future would be extremely interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If you change three things about the world, what would it be?
Boy, I wish we could, all just get along and understand that, yes, we are different people. We have different religions, cultures, languages, but that's the beauty of the world. If everything was the same, how boring would that be? If we all spoke the same language, did the exact same things, travel somewhere and everything's the same as back home, why would you ever travel? So that would be a huge thing for me. So having a better understanding of other people and cultures. Certainly the environment, like for people to be more concerned about the environment and their impact on it.
Yeah.
What else? I would like to change that more people could travel, that they would be more exposed. I think, travel is the best education that someone can get, and to learn from other people. That's why I travel, is because I want to learn about other cultures and ways of looking at things, different perspectives. Especially as Americans, people from the U.S., we tend to think that our way is the right way. And I certainly don't believe that. I mean, our way is one way. And yeah, we've been successful in different areas, but there are many, many successful countries throughout the world. And so being able to just learn from other people and being open to different ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. If you could have any dinner guest, dead or alive, who would it be?
Ooh, I've thought about this before. And who would it be? I think one of the great scientists like Einstein or Newton, that would be interesting. I'd love to have dinner with Paul McCartney. Um, yeah, gosh. Oh man, who else? There's Bob Marley. I
Bob
think he would
Marley.
be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bob
Ion,
Marley.
Lion, Giant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love Bob Marley and reggae.
Yeah.
So those would be some people that I would love to. I got to think about that sometime because that's a great question.
Yeah. Yeah. According to you, what is the best way to celebrate success?
I I'm not the best at celebrating success. I'm kind of always on to the next thing, and that's not good. I think we should celebrate success. We should, I think when I have a success, if we could get the word out there a little bit and maybe pat ourselves on the back, that can be a good thing, as long as it's not too self-serving. But yeah, I think it's important that we tell other people about our successes because sometimes they don't know that.
Mm.
They wouldn't know that we've had a success, and most of our friends and family would be happy for us.
Mm.
So, why not tell other people about it? And I'll do that. I'll put things up on Facebook. Hey, just had something really great happen.
Yeah.
I want you all to celebrate with me or to know
Yeah.
about it. And it's nice to get, people to give you a little bit of a pat on the back and say, hey,
Yeah.
great,
Yeah.
congratulations. Good for you. Yep.
Yeah. What is the best way to handle failure?
Yeah, failure is just another step towards success. So that's another thing that I've, learned as the older I get is that there are no real failures because as long as you're learning from your failures.
Yeah.
So if you aren't learning from failures and you're making the same mistakes over and over again, that's a problem. But if you're learning from that failure and can make your future tries at something better because you've made some mistakes, that's that we've all made hundreds and hundreds of failures throughout life. I know I have, but they brought me to where I am, to the
Yeah.
success that I have.
Yeah.
So that's the way
Yeah.
I look at it.
Favorite book?
My favorite book is Cosmos by Carl Sagan.
Carl Sagan. I love that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great, great. I actually have one of his books called The Demon Haunted World,
Mm.
and I sent it to him back in around, I don't know, I forget the year, but I sent it to him when he was still alive, and
Mm.
he signed it and sent it back to me.
Whoa.
So I have a signed copy of his book, and he spoke at my sister's graduation,
Mm.
which I was able to go to as well. So that was kind of cool. But he's
Oh,
a very admirable person.
whoa, wow. That's cool. Favorite movie?
Cinema Paradiso. Have you ever heard
Mm.
of it?
I'm not, I'm afraid.
It's an Italian movie that
Mm.
I believe won the best foreign language film back in like 1988.
Mm.
And it's absolutely amazing. I love that movie, Cinema Paradiso. And this past year, I took my mother and my aunt to Sicily,
Mm.
and we went to the town where it was filmed. That's how much I love this movie.
Mm.
And it was absolutely amazing to be in the town where my favorite movie was filmed and to see and
Mm.
recognize a lot of the things that were in the movie.
Mm. Cinema,
You should,
the English translated would be Cinema Paradise, right?
yeah. hmm
So is it about
Paradise
the
Center.
filmmaking?
It's
That reminds.
about a young boy who befriends an older man who is the projectionist at an old cinema in Italy back in maybe the 1930s. And he falls in love with film because he sees all these old movies and things
Mm.
at the cinema.
Mm.
But it's an incredible story about people, about this relationship between this young boy and this older man who, again, is the projectionist at this place.
Mm.
Absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend it.
I will definitely check out. Train or air travel?
Depends. I love train travel. Love it. Of course, it depends on the distances. You can't travel by train to Antarctica or,
Yeah.
from the US to Europe, but I love
Yeah.
train travel, especially in Europe where they've got a great train system. I don't think I've ever been, no, I have been on a train in India, but not too long or, the real famous ones. But I would like to experience that sometime, the trains in India, because I know they're very famous there. But the trains in Europe are just wonderful. So
Yeah.
it's a fun experience. It's part of the travel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Best time of year to travel?
Shoulder season. And are you familiar with that term, shoulder season?
Is it like a
Yeah.
winter? Actually, I'm not familiar, sir.
Yeah, no, it's before the high season or after the high season. So it's not low season, it's not high season, but it's in between. So
Okay.
it's typically spring or fall. Spring or
Okay.
fall almost anywhere in the world because, in the summer it's either hot or crowded in a lot of places, especially like Europe, US. But I like to travel in the spring and the fall. The weather's milder. In the spring, you've got the flowers blooming. In the fall, you've got the harvests and fall weather. And so the prices are lower. they're not as high. There's more availability of rooms and things. So we call it shoulder season.
Shoulder season. Wildlife photography or landscape photography?
I do love wildlife. I love it, but I would probably lean towards landscape. I enjoy photographing landscapes as well.
Hmm. The best souvenir you have ever bought?
Best souvenir. Yeah, I don't buy too much stuff when I travel, as you can imagine, but I've purchased a few rugs, like in Morocco, that I gave to my mother. But one of the most incredible travel items that I have, and I didn't purchase it, is a door from Morocco, like this old, maybe 300-year-old door
Door?
that they, a door. Yeah. And it's a small door. It's a
Okay, okay.
fairly small, it's like, how there's doors within big doors that,
Mm.
one small door to open up, but it
Mm.
could be a big door for horses and everything,
Mm.
but there's a small door for humans.
Mm.
This is a smaller door. It's not a huge, huge door, but it's actually just an art piece. And they sent it to me from Morocco as a gift.
Oh,
And so it's one of my prized possessions is this incredible, uh, centuries old door that I have. It's incredible.
interesting. Most challenging part of your job?
Jet lag, flying around the world and
Yeah.
having to always be on different time zones. And
Yeah.
the older I get, the harder it is for the
Mm.
jet lag and sitting on airplanes for 12 or 15 hours. That's why I have a bad back, I think.
Mm.
There's a lot of planes, trains, automobiles.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that can be a problem. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Most rewarding part of your job?
Seeing these places through my client's eyes. So going to a place, putting together a really wonderful trip, and then coming back with a group and watching them enjoy it and to have just as much fun as I did and the experiences.
Hmm. So, sir, one last question. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Be here now. I really think that is the best piece of advice. I've never, I didn't always take that to heart, but later in life, and they always say that youth is wasted on the young. I don't know if you ever heard that saying, but youth is wasted on the young. And so as we get older, we become wiser and more experienced, and we realize what we should have done maybe years ago. The other thing is investing. So I'm very interested in investing, and so the time value of money is so important, compound interest. And so for younger people, and the advice that I got and unfortunately didn't always take to heart was invest your money for old age. And if I could give advice to younger people or anyone, it's put away as much as you can, spend time and money on experiences, not things. Because things go away, but memories almost never do. And these are the things you'll always have. You can't take things with you,
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah, that is fantastic, sir. That advice is so fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. So, Mr. Ralph, that's the end of the podcast. Any final thought?
No, I would just recommend that people get out and travel. That they say someday never comes, and
Yeah.
so people say, someday I'll travel when I have enough money, when I have enough time, when I've
Yeah.
got this, when I don't have that, I'll do it, or whatever it is that they want to do. Yeah, time waits for no one, and so do it now. And don't wait for tomorrow because none of us is guaranteed that there will be a tomorrow.
Yeah.
So get it done today.
Absolutely, sir.
You also just mentioned if people would like to reach out to me and find out more information about what I do and my books, blog, podcasts, trips, anything, they can go to continentaldrifter.co And I'm sure you'll put that in the show
Yeah.
notes. But all the information about me, my social media contacts, everything is at
Yeah.
continentaldrifter.co.
I will attach all the links so our listener can find through the description of this podcast.
Hello, everyone. If you are on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to Shree's podcast, The Billion Insights. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please take a moment to rate us 5 stars if you enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ralph, for sharing your incredible experiences and valuable insights with us today.
Pleasure.
Your journey as a travel photographer and tour organizer has been truly inspiring, and I'm sure our listeners have gained a lot of practical tips and inspiration for their own travel.
I sure hope so. That's the
Yeah.
idea. Is I'd love to inspire more people to get out and travel. That's kind of my life's mission.
Yeah. And we look forward to seeing where your next adventure takes you. Safe travels, we wish you good health, and we hope to have you back on our podcast.
I would love to. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. And to our listener, be sure to check out Mr. Ralph's books and podcasts. All the link can be found in the description. See you next time on the Billion Insight podcast. Until next time, dream big and work hard. This is Sri, your host, signing out. Peace.